Swift, host of Ducks Y. Welcome to the channel. Today I haven't been live in a while, so hopefully it'll be good to see some of y'all again. And I was hoping we could just go through and summarize some of what's been happening in the United States. Obviously there's a lot of great stories that have been popping up, coming up again. So some of the sort of top stories are obviously the Alaska summit, obviously. And so what's that all about? We've had this Ukraine war that's been going on now for about 11 years. So it's been over a decade. And so Donald Trump believes there's a chance to come to a deal. He might believe it's time to make a deal that includes concessions to Russia. And so is that right? What's the sort of zoomed out geopolitical picture? Is this ceding too much ground? Is Donald Trump capable of managing this type of engagement? I'm also going to flip comments on. So if you get here, feel free to say what's up. Feel free to say what's up. And I will say what's up back. DC crackdown and National Guard deployment. And so Donald Trump, the other big news is Donald Trump deploying the National Guard, saying that DC was lawless. It's not really clear what sort of legal precedent there is, other than the base. But I do want to talk about this sort of zoomed out issue. Sort of the bigger issue here is that it appears that Donald Trump and the Republicans at this point in time are starting to move to more extreme rhetoric to sort of mask or make more vague the actual narratives and stories that are going on internationally, as well as nationally. I don't know if anyone saw Donald Trump today. Donald Trump today was giving a sort of talk at the Kennedy Center. And, we heard all the old rhetoric come out. And so this isn't the main point, right? The main point is actually what's going on, okay? But at the Kennedy Center, Senator Donald Trump was like, they were selling the wall at 4 cents on the dollar. They sold all the rebar, hardened steel, all these words that people know. We want to get our wall back. It's going to be the most beautiful wall ever. And so it's just funny, this type of rhetoric, America, we got to talk about the wall again, and, crooked Hillary once again. And that whole group, it's a group now. Well, for Donald Trump, this group of buzzwords is covering up the fact that, you have what appears to be maybe an illegal or unefficacious crackdown in Washington. You have a complete lack of transparency on foreign policy. Donald Trump just says, I'm going to, one of the most powerful nuclear states in the world, which is Russia. Their nuclear capabilities are huge. I'm just going to go make a deal with Putin in Alaska. I'm just going to go make a deal there. Hey, what's up? What's up, Trey? Ashtray. Good to see you. And so, what else? So it's not only this lack of transparency, but it's the fact that we're now using buzzwords and we're sort of wondering where we're at. Two of the talking points I was debating with Rob Noor and very briefly Andrew Wilson the other day. Two of the points that I brought up for them, big MAGA guys. Two of the points that I brought up is that, there's other issues Americans should care about. We should care about in the world, what Donald Trump could be talking about, sort of. It's like, where we at, right? Two of the issues that we could be talking about is Latin America is getting a little bit less like the West. I'm not saying that the West needs to go compete. We don't need to have a blueprint to, once again, like it's the 1930s, to transform Latin America, but we're all in the same hemisphere. So Donald Trump, other than, getting that sort of buzzsaw touting libertarian anarcho-capitalist president out of Latin America, Donald Trump, couldn't you talk to us about what's going on? Hey, thanks, Vexy. Why are Christians suddenly pro-child marriage? So CNN, to Olivia, CNN did a really interesting piece on Christian nationalism the other day. Some big time pastor kind of guy. I don't know if he's that big time. He wants us to say he's big time. But yeah, this guy that basically saying that, you sort of need a patriarchal Christian system. So it's very cool to see that on CNN. CNN also, they're like, unlike Fox News, who's like, hello, fellow kids, xenophobia, bigotry, small-minded stories. CNN talked a little bit about Destiny and the On F America tour and stuff like that. They had these Christian national guys on. And so I think folks that have seen Christian nationalism expand on the online debate space, like when I see pro-child marriage, all I can think of is this hyper masculine lack of sort of introspection, debate, ethics, morality writ large, bunch of nonsense. Hey, thanks, Amanda Gutierrez. Hey, what's up, man, with the iron balls? Good to see you. Just want to say what's up to everybody. How is the experience of tariffs? Yeah, so the most recent tariff news is Donald Trump announced that he was going to suspend the implementation of, 1 block or something of Chinese tariffs. Not sure what the reason for this is. I'm not sure what the reason for any of the tariffs is so far. I do believe that with, my sort of zoomed out view of this is that, with the tariffs, we should see some sort of battening of the hatches and maybe some actual market movement in sort of Southeast Asia, pushing from sort of China and Indonesia, Singapore, maybe into like India a little bit. And that'll create sort of like, what's going on? And perhaps a little bit of that sort of European sense of, we have to be more independent. Economically, we can't depend on liberalism in every sense. And so this sounds almost like Donald Trump has a good idea there, but it's like, well, yeah, if these were changes that were going to happen anyways, what's the rest of the sort of social movement to make capitalism more understandable, where it operates well and it's effective? What's the sort of paradigm to make capitalism a great lever for peace and diplomacy? Donald Trump didn't have an agenda. Donald Trump didn't have expectations of outcomes. Donald Trump didn't have, I don't think, a plan about who was actually efficacious in making America great again. Saying make America great again is the same thing to me as saying, oh, tariffs, build the wall. Barack Obama is a Kenyan. When you say these words like this, to me, it more signifies that Donald Trump's not a competent leader. Hey, what's up, RH? Thanks for the loaner. Yeah, appreciate it. Sounds like you want Trump to have us bombing Putin. I don't know where you would have gotten that from at all. I think if Russia's actual position is that, well, there's no reasonable situation that Europe can come to in the short term where we can have a increasingly securitized, increasingly wealthy Ukraine on our border, joining NATO. We can't have for the Russian state, news about, a new missile array or something like that is right next door to us. Why? And further, when we see economic aggression and, at some level it becomes ununderstandable. It's like, yeah, if you're the president, your job isn't to say, well, that's a really tough, complex situation. Let's just talk about it and get it done with. Your job is to say, well, that's a complex situation. What can we actually do in the short term that starts moving us closer towards sort of a shared goal that is understandable? I'm all for peace, but I'm also for hard-earned peace. This is what that word agenda to me means. Have an agenda if you're the president, right? Agenda is not a bad word. It's not like some globalist Davos conspiracy. Having an agenda is just saying, well, all of the people that are in the room right now are rational actors. We all have sort of our sights set on a priority. And so we have an agenda to accomplish something that's not out of line of what we think is possible in the future. But it's absolutely the case as well that individuals need to be able to, societies need to be able to contribute to those goals as well. Um, yeah, and so the other sort of news story. What are you yapping about, man? Hey, what's up, Just Dude? Good to see you. Oops, that's an alarm. I'll be right back. I'm just gonna go ahead and time you out for a day or so, Just Dude. Yeah. So the other story or the other issue that is sort of in line with what Donald Trump and politicians typically talk about, sort of as buckets, is this new bounty on Venezuela's president. So let me pull this up. I don't know if you guys saw this. This is big news. This is in the Western Hemisphere, so it's our very close neighbors. Venezuela. So Fox News reports and says Venezuela human rights, right? So borrowing language again. Let's see if they're going to tell the story, guys. I want to see if this Fox News story that I've got on my laptop here, if they're going to tell us the truth or use buzzwords. And so this article is titled "Venezuela Human Rights Hit New Low as U.S. Puts 50 million bounty on Maduro's Head." And so we have a Western Hemisphere country that's always been more isolationist. If you want to understand that, you can imagine a fairly well-to-do country in some ways, very more resource rich than others. They shouldn't be. If you just look at what resources they have, Venezuela should be a little better off than they are. But they've always had this sort of thrust of authoritarianism a little bit, partially because of resources. People accuse them of nepotism, sort of this almost like oligarchic regime-based rule. And it's also partially been, ideologically driven. Venezuela does business with Russian state energy and technology companies, partially because here's geopolitical reality. If you're in Venezuela, hey, what's up, KV? I'm just gonna Alaskan. Have I ever smelled mothballs? It's hard to get their legs apart. Cora M. Hey, what's up, Cora? Where's Trump supposed to talk to Putin? Oh, Alaska. Yeah, that's the answer. Just like a liberal. Cool. Yeah, liberalism is awesome. Liberalism is awesome. And so, if you're Venezuela, you might say, well, look, hey, it makes sense for us to maybe generate a little more revenue. In the short term, we can, there's a high demand for energy. We have energy, we have the oil rights. It's within our sort of sovereign state. And then normally how this goes is we understand this has geopolitical consequences. We understand this has environmental risks. And we understand that revenue has to be reinvested in a way that maybe you don't have we know you're going to have an opinion about it. Okay, so it's kind of like gathering blueberries from a bush. It's you can't tell me I'm not going to be a hunter-gatherer if I'm a state and I have oil. But I also know that you're going to have an opinion about it at some point in time. And so, it's maybe a complex situation. It's a very drastic step for the U.S. to say there's a $50 million bounty for a president. So let's see if Fox News is going to tell us the truth about why this is a good idea now, or whatever this is actually about. What this is actually about. So first on Fox, the U.S. State Department's annual human rights report delivered a grim assessment of conditions in Venezuela, declaring that human rights have fallen to a new low. Following reports of widespread abuse and state-sanctioned repression, particularly after the July 24th presidential election when Nicolas Maduro clung to power. The human rights situation in Venezuela significantly worsened, the report reads. Throughout the year, and particularly after July 28th, 2024, the presidential election in Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro and his representatives engaged in serious human rights abuses, reaching a new milestone to the degradation of the rule of law. So this is saying something really drastic. This is written by the State Department, and what this is sort of saying is is that like, yeah, this was maybe a short-term tactical decision that Maduro made in order to cling to power, but it had serious implications for the institutions within Venezuela. So if you understand that, this would be like Donald Trump saying, I'm going to elect Ronald McDonald to the Supreme Court. Who knows? Justice Kennedy retires or something, whoever it is, doesn't matter. But someone retires and all of a sudden Trump is saying, yeah, Ronald McDonald's got to step in and do this for us. And so I don't mean to oversimplify it, but that's sort of like, the light framing of it is that like, yeah, if you're cutting off people's internet or you're stopping people from going to the ballot box, you're closing public spaces for debate or dialogue, and perhaps people that are engaged in organization, you have formal force or power against those people. This is something the United States would notice. It's a big deal. It's not the only deal, but it is a big deal. It's definitely a big deal to say that, well, for the next however many 4, 6, 8 years, however your constitution is structured, Venezuela, at least as a baseline, we're going to say, well, Nicolas Maduro stole this election. This wasn't a democratically elected vote. And so what are the people saying? We at least have that sort of on the pin board. So let's see if we can get past that. Let's see if you guys let me know if you think that Donald Trump responded harshly enough at this point in time. Let me know. Feel free to like and tap that white subscribe button as well if you like not being talked down to for news and stuff. That's what we're trying to do here. So we're back to the Fox article. So according to the most recent State Department report, credible evidence indicates a dramatic escalation in arbitrary or unlawful killings, disappearances, torture, and harsh prison conditions. And so this does have geopolitical context. It has historical context. Throughout the history of basically anything south of the equator, there's this impression that you have these almost military leaders, or you have some form of violent military-like repression. And so saying something like unlawful killings and disappearances, this is like a very classic sort of technique that we've seen in political authoritarianism. A lot of the times it's because there are ideological differences that are more normalized than they are in the United States. So if that makes a little bit of sense, another way of saying this is like, well, look, there's liberal Democrats, there's social Democrats, there's people that want more direct democracy, there's people that just want smaller government, and there's people that want larger, more socialized government. And so if somebody's pushing too hard and nobody else actually cares or can do anything about it, you can just remove those people from the political debate or dialogue in the first place. And so, killings and disappearances and torture are very much like historical sort of references, I think, as well as, if it's what is happening. And then harsh prison conditions, it's just one of the things. So NGOs, this is back to Fox News, NGOs and the UN observers documented extensive restrictions on freedom of expression, with journalists and human rights defenders facing arrest, harassment, and censorship. Yeah, and so you're removing political opposition. So this is all into institutions. You're removing political opposition, and your journalists and human rights advocates, so NGOs, typically observers of sort of elections and just what's happening in society. If they can't actually talk about it, you're basically saying, well, we don't want international pressure coming in, whatever. And so you're talking about institutions, and Fox News is maybe intentionally or accidentally, or the State Department is doing this, is saying, well, they are pushing this into sort of the international space. And so, again, sort of traditional response, without being the world police, like a perfectly acceptable response. Let me know what you think. But yeah, you could also just say that, like, well, look, hey, what's up, Yogi? Good to see you again. Appreciate you. So this isn't rambling. Also, this is like very coherent political speech. So yeah, the other option is saying that, like, look, okay, so we have whiteboard number 1, where we observed you, Venezuela, stealing an election, so you don't have the actual democratic voice of the people. We might try and compete and tax you a little bit for that kind of stuff. not these arbitrary tariffs, but we might actually compete with you a little bit, kind of figure out what the future looks like, depending on how upset and how egregious some of the stuff is. And you can also say that, well, and the second thing that you did that sort of really messed up is that, yeah, you're trying to build a state internally, which maybe we can understand. We can be a little more anti-competitive about some of this stuff, but, at the same time, when you're removing that lever of the way that people communicate and learn about what's happening politically, and you're trying to get that sort of full Venezuela story out there, or you don't want that at all. Why? So those are the two things that are sort of pinned up, normally. And again, normally historically, without being the world police, it sounds very, very brash to say, let's just go fix everything right now, right? We're going to go fix everything and do everything that we can right now. Sniff, sniff. Yeah, a little bit. And so, yeah, don't mess with NGOs. The judiciary remain deeply compromised, unable or unwilling to hold perpetrators accountable for abuses. The report noted that United Nations fact-finding mission stated at least, so we're still talking about the same thing a little bit, at least 25 people were killed in the first days following the July 2024 election, including 2 children. And pro-Maduro leaders harassed and intimidated privately owned democratic opposition-oriented television stations, media outlets, and journalists through threats, property seizures, and prosecutions. So this seems very drastic, okay? And so, here's what I would imagine is Donald Trump's position on this, so Donald Trump, he's got, maybe Pete Hegseth, maybe a little bit of Tulsi Gabbard, maybe not that much, but, and Marco Rubio, and they're looking at this and they're saying, well, this Maduro guy is basically, so he's doing business with the opposition. He's not behaving like any of his neighbors. And he's also, he's indicating he's going more in that direction. He's indicating that he's going more in that direction. And so pro-Maduro leaders harassed, intimidated privately owned and democratic opposition-oriented television stations, media outlets, and journalists. So that whole media, you turn on Fox News, maybe you go to Daily Wire, even if Daily Wire sucks. You go to CNN or MSNBC, NBC, ABC News, your PBS, and you see anyone talking bad about Maduro is no longer in the picture. And so this is more extreme politics, because if you're a leader of the State Department, you could just say, well, hey, okay, it seems like you took step 1, which was really bad, and you did some really bad stuff. You might hear back about that, but you shouldn't go any further, right? Like, don't go any further to the point where we would believe that Venezuela is almost like an entirely clandestine regime-run nation where there's not free speech, there's not reciprocity, all that kind of stuff. And, yeah. Hey, what's up? Yes, no. Hey, what's up, Ian? Thames, thanks everybody watching. I appreciate you guys. If you want to double tap the screen to like or tap the white subscribe, I appreciate you. Yeah, and so at least in this story, the State Department a nation state's capable of taking in all of this information about what's going on. And my opinion as a US citizen is that we should respond to things that are happening and also give credit where credit's due, meaning that if Nicolas Maduro is capable of leading, as horrible as that sounds, if there's not a more optimal solution, if there's more optimal pathways to work with the opposition and the US can influence that, that should be considered as well. This idea that there's magic beans where you can just put out a $50 million bounty for a president, and suddenly this is going to change not only party loyalists and hardliners, but it's also going to change the systems that are currently supporting that, is very drastic. And so it's very myopic to me. And for Fox News to just quote Trump's State Department is what I would call this, Donald Trump's State Department, and to not add that context that there's actually a very rich space for diplomacy to play in. There's a rich space for there to be an agenda. There's a richer space for the United States to signal that we're serious about negotiating with one of Russia's partners in Venezuela. We're serious about negotiating with Russia, and we're also serious about being able to take coordinated, sort of understandable agenda-based action based on mutual respect. To me, seems like it's more about the Democrats being a party for peace, Donald Trump being a party for ununderstandability and blaming others for violence. I don't believe that, I think if my own personal opinion, and I'm trying to be somewhat objective, but my own personal opinion is if we had a Secretary of State like either John Kerry or Hillary Clinton right now, right? Those were my sort of primetime people. When I saw them talking, maybe I wasn't like overly optimistic, but I wasn't like not at ease. The sweeping report, which goes public Tuesday, calls out Brazil and South America for human rights abuses. So let's go fix that. Let's go learn about that, right? Not let's go drop a bomb on these people. And so I would think that with like strong leadership, we would have ways of not just accepting that Donald Trump's sending the police to Washington, D.C. Let's go learn about that. Let's go learn about all of the police right now. Okay, let's go. And so this also goes back to that rhetoric point. I want to put this on you for a second. Washington, I talked about how the loser's playbook in politics is using more extreme rhetoric, using the words people already understand. And so for Donald Trump and the Republicans, this is going back to talking about xenophobic, perhaps racist or overly simplified ideas, and one of the examples of this is, on Fox News and the Trump administration, they were touting, well, we made 23 arrests. Who did you actually arrest? Okay. And maybe a little more precisely, can you describe to me how, this is what I want to put back out there, is how did the National Guard get into this policing mode? What do they know about the city? Where does the sort of back pressure come from? If it was as simple as just having, a large militarized police force, wouldn't everybody be peaceful? And why do we see something like, we see a country like Russia, right? We see a country like Russia who has, both local as well as national police forces. They've been criticized as, not being super transparent, having political arrests and stuff. So maybe some bad actors in that system, somewhere between being awful and like what we wouldn't accept in the United States, and still not quite being like, like the worst stories that you could think of or whatever. Russia is like that a little bit. And so, if you see this country that's arresting gay people, arresting political leaders and stuff like that, isn't the action of being like a stormtrooper cop in Washington, D.C. the same exact thing? Right. And so this is what Donald Trump stepped into. Donald Trump steps into this idea that you can do it this way. It's so simple. It's so much easier than anything else. And people, like older people, are like, well, we already know this story. I've already learned this story. I've already seen what happens when you, even with like your local police, when you buy them too many, we decide we want to buy too many armored cars or whatever it is, and we're not investing equally in officer training, making sure there's well-being and stuff and training and stuff like that in the police force. We're not investing in community resources. We're not asking how technology can aid in those goals without sort of taking away the human element of policing. And so Donald Trump's taking away from all of that stuff with Washington, D.C. Now, it could also be the case, to be charitable and good faith, it could also be the case that Washington, D.C. does have an abundantly extreme crime problem that doesn't exist anywhere else, or it has special context because it's close to the capital. But we've never viewed Washington, D.C. that way either. Not one step back on this. Not one step back on this. We've never viewed Washington, D.C. as anything other than the nation capital. But you can also say like, well, D.C. and Baltimore, and maybe it's wrong a little bit, but we've, traditionally, if you say something like Beijing, like you associate Beijing maybe a little more closely with centralized Chinese power, then when we say Washington, D.C., we just say, oh, politics happens there, right? Everybody's got their journalists, their, the people that do interviews, all those people are in Washington, D.C. And with Beijing, you're saying, well, there's maybe some power function. There's some sort of philosophical power function, taken like an adult or something like that. Respectfully, your buddy duck only means respect all the time. Beijing must be like this. It must be respected even if we disagree, even if others say that we have to be rude and nasty like Donald Trump. I will disagree with this 100 times out of 100. Yeah. And so there we are, right? There we are. And so Donald Trump is asking us to sort of consider this picture that the president not only can send drones, troops, reinforcements, whatever that is, people with guns to Los Angeles, he's also saying that we have the same sort of paradigm that can almost recontextualize maybe what we mean by the police, by policing, by Washington. And I don't totally agree with that. I don't totally agree with that. If we want to pull this up, I don't want to spend that much more time on Fox News' website, but Donald Trump warns he may bypass Congress with national emergency to keep DC police control beyond 30 days. So Donald Trump's already signaling not only that the president has the authority to do all of this stuff, but that he wants to be able to do this for more than 30 days. He's not just making a point. And people might say, well, Donald Trump, not to be petty, but it's consistent within sort of your paradigm to do these fascist things, to have this overreach. And yeah, I appreciate everyone who's doing polite, respectful comments right now. I haven't seen any of our channel mods. We do have mods, but we don't usually stream at this time that often. So I appreciate you guys a lot. People that are being respectful, and also shout out to all of y'all. Sarge, Gabriola, Gnome, Bad Actor, Michael, Goody Two Shoes, Johnny Black, Don Ray, Carlos Vasquez. Good to see you all. Good to see you all. Yeah, Mad Dog. I've never been mugged before. If you guys want to, right in the kissa. If you guys want to take a couple pot shots at me, see if my opinion of the police change, let me know. Let me know. You're socially and economically underprivileged, so you can have my phone. Yeah. So, I think there's definitely a socially constructed way of describing underprivileged, or underprivileged. Yeah. So, lacking economic participation, lacking viable economic opportunities. Perhaps when we say that, framed in that way, a person themselves is viewed less charitably. I think there's also evolutionary or psychological ways to say that, well, we've built an unequal system, and people both opt and don't have the ability to opt into more formal means of avoiding high crime areas, avoiding perhaps higher risk activities in their own lifestyle as we encounter them and stuff like that. And so I don't think that's the broader point is that, yeah, you have sociology, you have hundreds of years of U.S. history and millions of years of human evolutionary history, which could be levers to actually build a better country, build a better longer-term future, and actually be the sort of deciders, right? How about this, President Trump, if you're out there? Donald Trump, I want you to tell me why we're not using social science, why we're not using the best research about the way that human brains work, not to sort of tell people what America must be like, but to help us inform decisions about why we do need to invest in better policing and why that would be, why it's not a different way that we can actually help more people out, solve the most critical problems. And Donald Trump, how about this while you're at it? Why isn't it the case that we have people from different political backgrounds that are on some sort of direct action committee or council related to Congress or related to these high crime cities that can use that to they have those resources. They can take time to deliberate and decide and help us come up with a better plan. Why should I believe that some not messianic, but almost like, the reality TV star Donald Trump, now acting as our 47th president, can come in and that Donald can do something like order the police to Washington, D.C., right? I want my POTUS, I want my President Trump to be great on his golfing trips. I want him shaking hands. I don't mind that. I want my president to be someone that knows that he has been successful in real estate, knows he's been successful building that some grassroots momentum, and knows he's been good at leveraging big dollars to keep that momentum. I don't want a president that believes that entitles him for some reason to go out and, whether it's the Big Apple or the Big Ugly in Washington, D.C., tell other people what the world is like and what they need to know. I don't want you to become a liar because you've spent so much time being honest. Donald Trump, that's my hope for you. And I want to know why someone like me who's so goddamn smart is too dumb to actually contribute to an opinion about what Washington must be like. And so while we're at this, why don't we talk about Adam Schiff for a second? Because I know some of my MAGA folks are going to want this talking point before anyone else, and I'm bringing it to you. So here's something. What's his name? Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff. So Adam Schiff has been outspoken recently about, this is a bombshell, Foxes and all these people. Adam Schiff approved intel leaks to smear Trump. So everyone's saying that Adam Schiff was engaged in illicit or illegal behavior. And here's what people don't understand. When you go out and you hear the Fox News and Republicans lying to your face or taking complexity out, saying, oh, we'll simplify it for the simpletons out there. Adam Schiff is in a district and he is a elected representative that goes out and always can sort of be a litmus test for the most extreme sort of political or procedural things the Democrats can do. Okay. So when we say that, well, all this group of Democrats is like this is complete bullshit. There's only a very small group of people that really go out and dig into Trump's either illegal dealings. They distract from the national platform. They tell you that, well, what you care about and the things that make people upset or unable to think about a political issue, whatever it is, right? Our attitude of superiority, where we're not able to create that sort of platform in the first place that helps us talk about issues. Most Democrats are out there talking about those things. Bernie Sanders is on a anti-fascism tour. We have a mayoral candidate in New York talking about things like public transportation and what it takes to be a successful person living in New York. Adam Schiff is a guy that says, I will sit there and read law books and I will sit there and go through documents and records. And if it's the case, the Democratic Party has to have transparency and hold people accountable. I can spend some of my time doing that because just the nature of who I am, where we are, and all this other stuff. When we go to the Republican Party, what Republicans are out there talking about different issues that people actually care about? Most of them are fake YouTube stars. They're Truth Social media contributors. They're an extension of Fox News. As a debate point, I'm not saying that we can't have a discussion or a dialogue about it, but who's actually brought up issues like property and economic rights, or the sort of economic and financial placement of things like rents and home prices and education on the right? Isn't it the case that more often when we turn on Fox News and we hear MAGA, MAGA, isn't it a little bit more likely the case that actually what we see is more of this sort of rhetoric that seeks to distract and not actually clarify what Donald Trump's achieved or accomplished? I think it is the case. Folks, I've got, it is an early release day, folks, so I got to get going relatively soon. If you guys want to do just a couple minutes of comments or something like that, and yeah, it helps the stream a ton. If you guys want to double tap your screen to like, or if you want to subscribe, that's always cool. Oh my God, I can't breathe. Yeah, but 23 arrests is sort of a crazy fact. Paradise Road says, remember the Biden administration? Yeah, life was kind of nice. I didn't think about the Biden administration being, just because it's simpler for me to understand. Some guy in Washington who is spending most of their time learning about nuclear bombs and who's got what planes where, right? That commander-in-chief role, or learning about, whatever it is, some ambassador from some place got the flu or got a stroke and missed a meeting or something like that. I don't think about that guy also doing Harvey Dent's job like it's a graphic novel or it's like a comic book. So I do remember the Biden administration, because there was nothing drastically wrong with what was going on at that time. Hey, what's up, Meow? Me, I don't know if that's like, yeah. We're just talking about Donald Trump a little bit, and sort of that replacement of actual stories about society or actual understandability about what's going on with rhetoric and narratives. And reading a little bit more carefully just to kind of get a picture of something. Josh Neely, yeah, saying Biden was a joke isn't a response to, it's not actually a response to saying that I don't want a president that is a police officer. It's not a response to saying that I don't want a State Department that talks to me like I'm an idiot. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Alaikum salam, I think. What's going on? Ricky, to you. Is more housing available, therefore lower prices? Yeah, it's possible. Right? I think there's a broader function around housing. Yeah. I wouldn't want to oversimplify it or take that issue, Matthew Jones, just right now, like just this second, just because we can. I would just mention that, I don't think it's a bad discussion to talk about things like rent controls, talking about things like building a better sort of democratic engagement mechanism, not Democrat, but democratic engagement mechanism. So people can decide what they want. So I live in Arizona, and Arizona grows really fast. We get big companies out here. We get all kinds of stuff, and they just recently built a bunch of apartments and condos and stuff like that. And a lot of the rents are more than like home mortgages on, 1,300 square foot apartments. So nice apartments, some probably smaller, but yeah. And so, when people talk about like zoning decisions for apartments or condos and stuff like that, and, I think the free market needs to be able to work a little bit, but then it's like, well, what goes with that? If we're deciding we're expanding housing, shouldn't something else also change? How do we talk about that and at least get people sort of excited for changes that can happen? Letting 1 million people into the country illegally is probably a big deal from chilling it. Let me see. Bop, bop. Where we at? I can bop, bop. Watch this. This is extreme power on my side. Yeah, maybe. I might also say that, the decision, the reciprocal of this is, well, what do I become like? We talked about this sort of industrial militarized police concept a little bit We talked about having what it's actually like when your sort of leaders in the police department are now now some of them have political affiliations that run deep into sort of enforcement and stuff like that. And so if we just take that sort of idea that you can imagine corruption, right? Corruption's easy enough to understand. What does the government begin to look like when you're saying, well, people can't go where they want to go. People can't go in a place like Arizona where it's like, well, who knows? There's jobs here, right? There's jobs here. You're not going to feel that uncomfortable if you move from Sonora to Phoenix or something like that. Same thing with Dallas, Fort Worth, or a lot of places. San Diego, right? Same thing. Bunch of beach bum Mexicans and Californians hanging out together. And what do the New Yorkers want to do then? They want to go out there too, right? And so letting 1 million people into the country illegally is a big deal. I think it's conceivably, if you're being actually good faith or you're trying to have a discussion, chill in it, I would say it's equally a big deal to say we need people that are completely repressive of normal, typical, just stumbled upon desires to have a job or to live someplace. It's equally scary to have those types of people like Tom Homan that were appointed and trusted by Trump, not just to be an enforcer, but to be a mouthpiece. What are you actually doing in there? So that's my response to chill in it. Are you an economist, black painter, decorator? No, I did political science for my bachelor's degree. I'm more of an artist than anything else. Living and learning. Gnome Body, sorry to disappoint. Yeah, Gnome Body, if you want to, I see you stayed, so decrypt recursive logic. Yes, without bias can be a conversation, yet here we are. Yeah, how do you get out of recursive though, Gnome? If you want to be a jerk to me, maybe because you're trying to get my attention, it's a cry for help, my friend. But no, what's actually recursive when we're talking about sort of normalized relationships? That's a very simplified view to tell people that, oh, well, I'll use this buzzword that is, an abstract way to view things, and I can move it forward and back and up and down. And so I don't think you actually need all that stuff to signify or to talk a little bit about who the people are that were involved in a decision and why it's relevant. I'm a little bit different than you on that one. I'm a little bit different than you on that one. I don't know. So I'll toss that back to you, Gnome Body. Look at my drugged out eyes. Yeah. Him, you can, Him, I'll send you away for, how about this? In 10 minutes, you can come back. We'll see you, buddy. I'm a vegan, folks. We'll see you in 10 minutes. If you guys want to like and subscribe, I'd rather have you like and subscribe because we talk politics. But if you want me to ban people saying mean and rude things, feel free to like and subscribe. What are we doing, folks? You're just saying words still and dance around and answer. Aaron O'Neill, ask a direct question. You people are all big and strong together in the comments, you MAGA folks. But where is it online, right? I crushed Rob Noor. I crushed Andrew Wilson the other day in a debate. If that's what you're talking about, if you want me to see like a great conservative commentator, who knows? Set it up. Join the Discord. Tell me who I have to debate when and where. The point that you guys would rather, go play Tekken, or you guys would rather spend time, on the new Final Fantasy or whatever it is, instead of actually reading a news story and trying to explain it. And then it's like, yeah, if you can create sort of a 10% entertaining and informative educational sort of environment, go do that. But yeah, Aaron, saying you just say words and dance around and answer, I haven't done that once. I want to be able to create a more open gathering space. Let's go. Bug-eyed meth smoker. Yeah, totally. Travis, I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for you, and welcome to the internet. We're doing this now, aren't we? Bam. Bam, right in the kisser. Is that boom? That's what we're doing? Cool, buddy. Tell me more about it. Tell me more about it. Travis Perkins is probably a 24-year-old that doesn't know he has a prefrontal cortex. I don't mean to make fun of him like that, but yeah, you're allowed to consider an idea for like 3 seconds at a time if you want. The police. So yeah, the coaching of Travis Perkins is maybe the new show, my friends. No, I'm just kidding. Be nice to each other, guys. What about Cory Booker? Yeah, I think Cory Booker was one of these guys that was very ambitious. He's able to get a lot of support and get a lot done. I think like anyone else, it's always great. It's always very powerful to like if I'm being a shill, if I'm being an absolute Democrat shill, Cory Booker is good because it's great to show people what's possible. And it's great to show people that you're actually allowed in a democracy, in a free country, you're allowed to introduce change. Someone like Cory Booker has never been influential enough to actually deeply consolidate change on sort of, if I'm saying no, if he's the guy that says yes and I'm saying no back to him, it's like, yeah, Cory Booker, you've never been influential enough to sort of be able to funnel enough resources that change produces the result that we all want. And yeah, and so it's difficult. It's like, yeah, should Cory Booker be a guy that's on the national level? Should he be a guy that starts developing these small, close relationships that are capable of producing change in sort of the dialogue and stuff like that? And to me, the other side of it is like, well, no, we need strong local politicians. We need people that are capable of getting elected, capable of even accepting maybe a defeat and figuring out what's next in their career at some point in time, and that can still develop that momentum on the local level. So, I think all of that's another way of saying that, like, yeah, Cory Booker's sexy on television. He's sexy when he's at the ribbon cutting ceremonies. He's sexy when he's talking about a sexy issue. He's a good guy. He's a good guy for sure. He can bring change and you're an anarchist. Yeah, cool. So like Robert, I like Robert Nozick. A lot of the anarchists I know think that like, well, can't we just talk about decision making? It's a very different way to sort of see things. My brain and your brain. It's like, how do you get a Tesla? How do you get a Honda Civic or something like that? And so that sort of skips, like, without going sort of overboard or burning a hole in your brain, burning a hole in the ecosystem or something, like, I'm always skeptical of these sort of like technocratic motions that aren't saying, well, okay, we have something that solves for access. We have something that solves for the financing problems. We have something that solves for expediency and gives people a chance to build around. And we're not going further. We're not going past that. And so when people say that all Democrats are socialists, I see a guy like Cory Booker more as saying, well, I know how far I'll go. And politically, maybe, yeah. So I would just say that. On another note, it's good to see that you showered. Yeah, I just got done with the workout. Busy morning, right? I said it's early release day. So I was lucky. I had a little bit of coffee, got 20 minutes of work in, and I figured I've been wanting to do this live stream, kind of catching up on some of the stuff. This probably could be like a 7-hour live stream if I had more time, to be honest. But yeah. I have 6 more minutes before I have to go. So if there's anything else you guys want to talk about, I'm reading comments now. I'll try and catch yours. But yeah, I did. I got a coffee, workout, and I'm really glad that. Thank you guys. I'm glad I got to get an hour in today because I've been thinking this has been burning a hole in my brain. What's your view on what is What is APAX? APAX, is that the Israel lobby? Let me see. Yeah, I disagree with the globe, with almost that conspiracy coded language bend to the question. I think that, this is my recommendation to Cripple Devil. And anyone is, hold your own media and elected representatives accountable first. If they're talking to you about how many people they're arresting, and that doesn't matter at all. If they're talking to you about how successful they are and all this other stuff, and that's not actually how you measure success, well, those are bigger issues than a political lobby. Vegan TDS vibes here. Could be wrong though. Hey, what's up, Twez? Yeah, if you want to like and subscribe, that's cool. I'm gonna time you out for just 10 seconds here, just to delete that really stupid fucking comment. So there you go. You'll be back in 10 seconds, my friend Twez. Living in Newark, I can tell you Corey answers to whoever pays the money. All right, so Jack Johnson is an insider to Cory Booker. Cool. I appreciate that. Both Last Presidency with Buns, Word Salad is not intellectualism. Oh snap! You said I do look like Bryant. Yes. Oh my God, you're daft. Stinker Poo says I'm daft. That's a cool insult. I like daft. Operation Put the Chickens in the Basket, man. A chomo. What is a chomo? All right. I don't know if that was a typo, but we'll see you in 24 hours, buddy. Put glasses on too, bro. Yeah, feel free to subscribe though if you want to subscribe. Love to have you back. 200 days in office, Trump is making America great again. Yeah, how do you measure that? Where is that change actually coming from? Can you specify? There's not a universe that exists where a person, Donald Trump, is what makes the universe better again. So I'd like to know what Donald Trump did, what he had last Tuesday, for breakfast, and if that's going to make America better then too. Isn't that how that would work? Yeah, let's be honest. And Scotty, yeah, just to border for starting a war, border for a start. Border is a word, right? You're naming something. You're not telling me what a border means. Original name says something. Hey, what's up? What's up? I don't know what that is. So I'm just going to delete it. Jeff Epstein. Oh, this guy's one of those. Hey, what's up? Original name. Hey, appreciate you, bro. I don't know what that is. So nobody knows what that is. If you're not going to speak English, I'll just ban you the fuck off the channel next time. How about that? What does that actually mean, my friend? There's the question. Oh, what the heck is this? This is close to the end of a stream. I've got 2 minutes left, folks. If you guys want to subscribe, I'd appreciate to have you guys back. Thank you so much. It's awesome for me to have 200 folks here. I hope it was fun chatting for the most part, and all this other stuff. And yeah. And I think that's the end of the stream. Yep, I'll be out in a second. Yeah. Yeah. Stinky Paradox, I don't know what a leftist is. And how about this? I can make this way easier. You're hit on the channel now. I don't know what a leftist is. So peace. You're not doing jack shit, my friend. We'll never see you again. Yeah. Let's just original name. You should come back to another stream. I'm going to time you out for 24 hours. If you want to have an actual conversation sometime, feel free, but you're gone. Constitutional Republic for Democracy. I don't have more time, folks. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Nathan Swift. Online, I go by Duck. The channel is Duck's Why. We do politics, philosophy, sometimes discussions, debates, sometimes open panels and stuff. Yeah, we can do religion, philosophy, politics, all that kind of stuff. Clearer thinking for a clearer world. I'm going to be the one that's trying to hold it down, trying to bring a decent amount of experience unpacking political issues, reading through things, being somewhat well-read and well-researched. And I hope you guys enjoy yourselves. I hope you guys have a little bit of fun here, and we're also able to tackle more serious issues together. Go live in Venezuela. That's a great takeaway from the stream, is that you could actually probably go live in Venezuela. It wouldn't be fatal. And so what does that mean? It means nothing. Let's go. Yeah, go USA. That's orthodoxy is the truth. Well, I'll make this way easier for you as well. You're gone forever as well. We'll see you. Bye. Take care.